Hi, welcome to another episode of Livestream Lee, where we talk about how to become more successful so that you can grow your business faster, make bigger profits, retire earlier, and get your life back in control. Entrepreneurs and small business owners will know what I mean. It's sometimes very difficult to get that time back that you spend. And so we're here to help you figure that out. Today, we're going to talk about something I think you're going to find very interesting and very helpful. This is recurring revenue versus non-recurring revenue. This is a conversation that I actually have with a lot of people that have started a business. Unfortunately, I have the conversation after the fact when they should have had that conversation much earlier before they started the business. Having a recurring revenue stream is one of the best things, the best gifts you can give yourself as a business owner, because it makes your company much more predictably valuable to the next person that comes along to buy or own your company. And that's really one of the major reasons why we start businesses, isn't it? To create value so that somebody can buy our asset and then we can retire or do whatever our next thing in life is. Maybe it's not retirement. So before I move on, I want to take just a moment and introduce you to somebody that I think you're going to really enjoy. His name is Dan Nelson. He has a company called Ancestors. He's a genealogist. Now, I am a fan of history. It's one of my favorite topics. And Dan is not just a fan of history, he digs it up. He digs it up out of people's backgrounds, their families, and he finds those interesting characters. Dan has a newsletter that he sends out twice a month, and I'd like to encourage and invite you to go to livestreamlee.com. Let me put that up on screen, livestreamlee.com, and there you're going to find a button that says Dan Nelson, Ancestors Genealogy. Click there and you'll go to Dan's website where you can sign up for his newsletter. I get it a couple times a month, which is when he sends it out, and it's a fun read. It is always filled with interesting stuff. So if you're a fan of history and would like to find out about some interesting characters, go get yourself signed up for Dan's newsletter. And if you're interested in having Dan look up the interesting characters in your ancestry, he's the guy to do it, Dan Nelson. All right. So what I want to talk about today, generally speaking, falls in the category of starting a business. Now, obviously, we're here to talk about starting a business, but I thought I would take a moment and give you a quick overview of the essential steps that you should be undergoing when you start a business. So it starts with formulating a concept, having an idea, and that basically means thinking that you have found a niche in the market which has a demand which you can fill. Now, this is kind of where a lot of people start, and then they just jump to maybe starting a business. This is a common and an unfortunate way to proceed. There are a number of steps that you really should go through, one of which is doing a feasibility analysis. We haven't talked about feasibility analysis yet, but that's a good first step. You should do a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We have actually already talked about that. You should do a value chain analysis of the industry or business that you're thinking about getting in. We have, in fact, already talked about that. You should also do a 5 forces analysis, and we haven't yet talked about that. That's actually going to be in this week's strategy sessions on Tuesday and Thursday. You should define your business model. That's actually what we're going to talk about today, and there's a deeper dive that we can make into that, so we're only going to talk about a piece of that today. Then you should test the market and prepare a business plan, raise your capital, and launch your business. These are the sequences of steps that, generally speaking, you should follow when you're launching a business. So today we're going to talk about the business model, and there are several elements in a business model. In fact, today we're really only going to talk about one element, and that is the revenue model. But when you do a business model, there are multiple things that you should consider. One is your customer profile. Now, we've actually already talked about how to develop a customer profile. I call that audience clarity, but there's a number of ways you could describe it. One is a customer avatar, customer profile, audience clarity, but you have to have very good clarity as to what problem you solve, who has the problem, where they are. That's the customer profile. Then there are other things that go into the business model. One is support. How are you going to support the customer after you sell? What is your value proposition? How do you communicate your value proposition? How do you differentiate yourself vis-a-vis the other competitors in the industry? How are you going to sell? How are you going to distribute? How are you going to price? These are the essential elements of a business model. Now, the revenue model is, I think, the single most important element of the business model. Before we jump into a discussion of that, though, I want to introduce you to the concept of a business model canvas. The business model canvas is a common and well-respected way of putting your entire business model into a single sheet of paper so that you can succinctly communicate to investors and or staff members and or customers how you propose to run your business. Now, the business model canvas is a technique that really corresponds with the business model elements I showed you just a moment ago. The revenue model is an important piece of the business model, but the business model canvas, but so are customer segments and customer relationships. Now, customer segments and customer relationships kind of fit into the space of the customer profile. Customer segments are basically what kinds of customers and how do you define them. And customer relationship defines how you look forward to having a relationship. What kind of relationship are you going to have with your customers? A little different twist on the business model elements I showed you just a moment ago. The value proposition is essentially the same thing. It's how you're going to communicate your differentiation in the marketplace to the customers and the value that they're going to get out of doing business with you. Then you're going to talk about things like channels. Now, there's essentially two channels. There's distribution channels and there's communication channels. So in the business model canvas, you cover both of those. And then you look at key activities, key resources, and key partners. The key activities are the key things that you need to do in this particular industry that you're thinking about getting in to be successful. The key resources are identifying the important resources that you need to have. Of course, the two most important resources are money and people, but there are potentially other resources. But identifying the specific kinds of talents and so on that you should have is important. Key partners would be the support group that you put around you, and it could be suppliers, it could be advisors, it could be financiers. These are the key people that should be not necessarily in your company, but people that you have access to. And then, of course, your cost structure. What is your margins? What do your costs look like? And this really relates to the pricing sort of side of things. So when you prepare a business model canvas, it's a little different exercise than what we're actually talking about today. But I wanted to differentiate in your mind the idea of a business model and a business model canvas. The business model canvas is where you succinctly boil your plan of operations down into short, succinct statements that allow you to communicate quickly and effectively what you're doing. The business model is a slightly different sort of academic approach to understanding what you're going to be working on. But today, we're going to talk about just one piece of the business model, and that's the revenue model. Now, you are going to build a revenue stream built around one of two primary sort of revenue types, either recurring revenue or non-recurring revenue. There are hybrids of the recurring and non-recurring revenue models, if you will, and that is where you have elements of both involved in how you generate revenue in your business. Probably the most important decision you're going to make is how you're going to uh, charge for your services. Are they going to be recurring or non-recurring or something else? Now, generally speaking, having a recurring revenue model gives your company the ability to predict the future. And that is an important thing. Being able to know what the future looks like from a financing perspective allows you to prepare for the future. So if you have a business where you have recurring monthly, quarterly, or annual payments, or if your payments are based upon some sort of quantity metric, like the number of, well, just the number of units of something that people are going to buy from you, then you have a generally what you might consider a recurring revenue model. The easiest ways to look at a recurring revenue model are to think in terms of the kinds of businesses that are out there, and think in terms of like cell phones and cable television companies. Cell phones and cable television companies have recurring revenue model streams. You're generally speaking, among the most valuable companies in the world are the companies that have a recurring revenue model. So let's think about what that means. What are some of the most valuable companies in the world? Well, one of those companies is, of course, maybe the most valuable might be Amazon at the moment. Certainly Amazon and Apple are among the top. Amazon has a recurring revenue by virtue of the fact that they have so many products and services, or products that people want, that they can largely count on a recurring revenue stream. However, Amazon's greatest value comes from something most people are not familiar with, and that's called Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is the most valuable part of Amazon, and it is a purely recurring revenue model. Amazon provides web-based server services to companies that need to have basically web servers providing a service. Amazon charges on a usage basis. Essentially, it's a monthly usage metric centered around a number of different variables, like how many computing instances and how much bandwidth and that sort of stuff you need. But because all of the clients need a certain level of that, and in bulk it's very predictable, Amazon has a high level of recurring revenue that's extremely predictable to them. Now, their retail sales revenue is recurring only in the sense that people are always buying stuff. And since Amazon has so much stuff, they can count on a certain volume of production. But Amazon's, one of its most productive and profitable units is web services. Within the web services arena is the Amazon Prime streaming television service. Now, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you're paying Amazon $125 or so per year, say $10 a month, and you get a lot of benefits from that. One of the benefits is you get access to their streaming television, streaming entertainment service. This is very similar to Netflix and Disney. Now, Netflix and Disney both have extremely, Netflix is a pure streaming service model with, I think, a monthly fee of around $13 a month for Netflix. And they have 150 or 200 million people paying that much money per month. They have a huge value because they have so many people paying them $13, $12, $13, $11, $12, $13 a month. Disney used to be almost entirely dependent upon amusement park revenues. And then as it expanded the number of amusement parks and got more into the movie production business, their revenue stream began to diversify from just being primarily amusement park and cartoons to movies. Then they started purchasing movie properties like the Marvel Cinema Universe, as well as the Star Wars cinema universe. And then they launched, that gave them a broader level of content to be able to sell, produce more revenue from the movies. And then they recently, a couple of years ago, got into the streaming television service where they make all of their content that they've accumulated over the years available for a monthly fee that is now in the $11, $12 a month range. It started out being $6, $7, $8 a month and has now graduated to $11 or $12 a month. Disney has seen a tremendous increase in their market cap valuation attendant or related directly to the launch of their streaming television service. So what I'm talking about here are companies like Amazon, Netflix, Disney, AT&T's, Verizon, Spectrum Communications or Charter Cable Communications. These are all companies that have predictable recurring revenues based upon some aspect of a monthly or annual or some combination thereof charges that they charge to customers, which lock those customers in to renewing on a regular basis. Recurring revenue models are great for a couple of reasons. One, it's the predictability of the revenue, and two, it's the value that becomes associated with your company when you get ready to sell. If you're successful at creating a significant recurring revenue stream, people that are interested in purchasing your company will have an easy time valuing your company based upon the predictability of that recurring revenue stream. So when you're starting a business, you should always be extremely focused on how do you create a recurring revenue stream from your client base. Now, it's kind of easy and kind of obvious if you're selling services like that. Now, let's look at a few specific examples of recurring revenue stream businesses. I've already mentioned mobile phones and streaming TV. Yard maintenance companies have yard maintenance companies have a recurring monthly revenue stream. Now, if you're in Florida, you probably can do yard maintenance all year round. If you're in Minnesota, you have a few months. So the degree to which you're able to have a predictable recurring revenue stream depends upon the degree to which you're capable of supplementing your yard maintenance service with other services. I have a client that's a successful yard maintenance and yard landscaping company, but they also do Christmas light installation, holiday light installation, and maintenance and management. So obviously during the winter season in North Texas, you don't do nearly as much yard maintenance and lawn maintenance and yard landscape installation as you do in some other parts of the United States. But you can supplement that by having something like Christmas light installation and management programs. So that gives you an alternative. Another is life insurance companies. Life insurance companies are great. It may take you a while to build a book of business, any kind of insurance, really, for that matter. It may take you a while as an agent to build a book of business. But once you've built a book of business, you have the ability to have a long-term relationship with those clients, especially for things like life insurance and health insurance and disability income insurance and umbrella insurance and stuff like that. Now, there are some types of insurance like auto insurance where people shop around much more frequently, but still, to the extent that you're able to maintain the customer, you have a predictable recurring revenue stream. Security alarm services, same kind of thing as cable television companies, same general concept. Mortgage lenders. When you sell a mortgage, you have a predictable recurring revenue stream associated with that if you're also the company that services the mortgage and takes a piece of the servicing fee for yourself. So these are great examples of monthly recurring revenue streams, or generally recurring revenue streams that have a high degree of predictability. Now, for examples of companies that have non-recurring revenue streams, some great examples would be real estate agents and criminal defense attorneys. Real estate agents are constantly hunting for new clients. Now, those clients are pretty lucrative, but they are, you have to always be on the hunt for one. So real estate agents are constantly looking for new clients. They may sell a home to somebody, but it might be 5, 6, 10 years before that person buys another home. So the real estate agent has the challenge of maintaining a relationship with that person until they buy their next home. That's sometimes is kind of a challenging thing for many people to do over a long term. And so one of the biggest challenges real estate agents have is, how do you maintain a top of mind relationship over a long term? Criminal defense attorneys, if you're successful at getting somebody out of a problem that's a criminal issue, you run the risk of that person never wanting to come back or never coming back to you as another client. Now, I say risk, you're hoping that they don't create another situation where they're involved in a crime, but you can't count on that to happen. And you also can't count on a whole lot of referrals from criminals to one to another. Now, maybe I'm mistaken there. Certainly, if you watch shows like Breaking Bad, the criminal defense attorney there certainly depended upon referrals, but you get my point. Auto sales, you buy cars, but the car person that you bought from doesn't typically have the kind of longevity with a firm, with a dealership, that'll cause you to have a long-term relationship with that salesperson. The dealerships do try to build relationships, and some dealerships like Sewell and Park Place are well known for their ability to build relationships that are long-term. Roofing contractors don't typically get a whole lot of repeat business. They might fix a roof and then you move, and whoever owns that house next doesn't have a relationship with you. Or the roof might last for 10 or 15 years and not need another repair. Luxury hotels. People don't tend to take vacations at the same hotel year after year after year. So luxury hotels are constantly looking for new guests. Wedding venues. How often do you get married? Well, hopefully not but once. But if you do get married a couple of times, there's usually long times gaps in between, and you don't typically go back to the same wedding venue. So wedding venues are constantly looking for new people. Department stores, you may very well have a department store that's your favorite for clothing or other things, but the reality is you don't typically have to go by on a regular basis. So department stores don't have the ability to predict recurring revenue. The challenge with all of these businesses is how do you smooth out lumpy revenue streams? Most of these businesses have some degree of seasonality to them. Roofing contractors, storm season. Luxury hotels, vacation season. Wedding venues, wedding season. Department stores, Christmas season. Auto sales, a little bit more Christmas oriented, but the point is almost all of these kinds of businesses depend heavily on advertising because they don't have a recurring revenue component, so they have to be constantly trying to attract new customers. Now, the businesses that are in the recurring revenue stream business do advertise, but not nearly as aggressively, and the intensity of rivalry within their industry is probably not quite the level that it is for these non-recurring revenue stream businesses. Okay, so there are other kinds of recurring revenues. Virus protection, gasoline, lunch, and restaurants that serve lunches or dinners, especially lunches. Let's talk about each of those. Virus protection will often be an annual recurring revenue, but there are some virus protections out there that you can buy, and you don't have to upgrade annually. You might upgrade a little bit less than annually. Gasoline, there are very few gas stations or gas distribution networks that have any kind of contractual relationship. Now, there are some that deal with cities and large corporations that do, but generally speaking, you are more habituated to your gas provider than you are obligated. And so based on price and where you're located, you'll tend to shop certain patterns. But the thing about gasoline is we all need it when we travel. We've got to have it. So dispensers of gasoline can be pretty confident that they're going to sell it based upon local pricing conditions. Lunch restaurants. When you're at work, you have to eat. So you go out to lunch. Now, you could take your lunch to work, but most people don't. So lunch restaurants have a fairly dependable revenue stream. They just don't have a contractual obligation with anybody. Nail salons and hair salons, people that get their nails and their hair done, get their nails and their hair done on a regular basis. They tend to use the same supplier or provider on a regular basis. They don't have contractual obligations, and so your customer can always go somewhere else, but these are relatively predictable recurring revenue streams. Same thing with dry cleaners and auto repair. So while you don't have a contractual obligation, you do have a relatively high level of predictability to the recurring revenue that you're going to have in most of these kinds of businesses. And then you have businesses where you're going to have a hybrid revenue stream. Now, an easy one is business attorneys. Business attorneys will typically have contractually oriented events. Okay, so you might get involved in some litigation, you get sued, so your business attorney needs to step in and provide you with protection, legal protection, by virtue of an enhanced number of hours to counter a lawsuit and get involved in that. That's an event-related revenue stream for the attorney. But a lot of business attorneys will go through the process of creating monthly payment relationships, retainage relationships, where you pay them on a regular basis monthly. You therefore get a reduced hourly rate, and you build a bank of hours that you can use when something does happen. This allows the business attorney to smooth out their revenue stream and have greater predictability. The same thing works with business coaches. Business coaches will often create a monthly retainer and training programs that you can engage in. This gives them greater predictability rather than having consulting engagements that are one shot or short term. Mortgage bankers do the same thing. They will sell a mortgage, and then they will service the mortgage from funds that they themselves have control over. So they get not only the interest rate, but they get a servicing fee from this. So mortgage bankers will do this. And then stockbrokers. Stockbrokers often engage in something that you would call churn, which means that they're constantly repositioning your portfolio, because every time they reposition your portfolio, there's a buy and a sell transaction, which generates commissions that they can earn money from. Portfolios do need to be repositioned occasionally. And I'm not saying that that's unjustified, but that's a way for stockbrokers to create current revenue for themselves, as opposed to only long-term revenue when you cash out of a position after 20 years. If they had to wait 20 years to get their next commission, they would starve to death. So a lot of times stockbrokers engage in portfolio repositioning, really primarily because they need to generate current revenue for themselves. So these are all examples of hybrid revenue streams. The point of this exercise is to make you think, or to help you think about the kinds of revenue streams that you're going to have related to your business. You definitely want to have, as much as possible, a revenue stream that is predictable and has a recurring element to the greatest degree possible, a tight recurring predictability with as much significant revenue as you possibly can. So if you haven't thought about these things before you start your business, you should think about them now. You know, one of the things that as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we constantly have to deal with is the stuff we didn't know about. Stuff that comes up, things we didn't know that were going to happen or we need help with. And so it's important for us to surround ourselves with people that have the ability to see what we don't see coming. And I put risk management in that arena. Risk management is one of those areas where you're not in the risk management business, so it's hard for you to really get a grasp on all the things that can go wrong. And when something goes wrong, it's nice to have somebody in your corner to help financially and with advice. I use a guy named Carlos Cantu with TWFG Financial Services. He's a commercial risk management specialist, and Carlos is one of those guys that you like talking to because you know he's got integrity and he's knowledgeable. Carlos Cantu is, again, a commercial risk management specialist with TWFG. I depend on Carlos to help me with risk, and I know that he's a good guy that you could depend on. If you go to livestreamlee.com and you click on the Carlos Cantu button, you can get directly in touch with Carlos or read more about him. And if you're interested, give Carlos a call, because I guarantee you that he will be able to give you a perspective and some thoughts on your risk situation that can help you avoid some of those expensive gotchas that always seem to happen especially as you get more successful in business. I want to put a little plug in for the next conversation that we're going to have. We're going to be talking about revenue models and business models again on Wednesday of this week. That's the 24th. And then on Tuesday and Thursday of this week, we're going to be talking about the 5 forces analysis process. This was something developed by Michael Porter back in the 80s and the 90s, and it is an incredibly effective tool for helping you to decide whether or not you should be getting into the business that you're getting into, or you should expand into a business that you're thinking about expanding into. So join us at 3 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday of this week, specifically for information and a better understanding of what a 5 forces analysis thought process looks like and how it can help you. And then on Friday of this week, I'm going to be interviewing Tisha Hammond. She's the president of the Ascent Preparatory Academy for Entrepreneurs. Tisha is quite the entrepreneur herself, and she provides a lot of guidance. We're going to talk with Tisha and find out how she got into the game, the business, the Preparatory Academy, exactly how she got that started and kind of her background and what kinds of issues she helps people overcome. So I hope you'll join us. And again, in the meantime, if you'll go to livestreamlee.com, join our community, you'll have access to all kinds of information. And plus, when you join our community, we're going to ask you to tell us about your business. And when you do, we're going to try to help you find some customers. That's one of the things that we try to do. And so join our community, tell us about your business, and then we'll see if we can't help you grow your business and help you find customers. Thanks for listening and watching today, and I'll see you tomorrow at 3. Bye now.